Imagine reaching the pinnacle of your career just to have it all ripped away. It happened to an accomplished violinist when a medical mystery threatened his gift. Watch this story. Violinist Roger Frisch grew up in Pittsburgh and fell in love with music at an early age. At 23 years old, he joined the Minnesota Orchestra and rose through the ranks to become first chair and the associate concertmaster, playing in concerts across the globe. In 2010, Frisch started noticing tremors that were taking over his body, including his arms.
And for the first time ever, I noticed a little tiny shake in my bow arm. The arm that needs to have absolute perfect control. As a musician, that's when you start panicking.
Frisch sought help from a Dr. Kendall Lee, a neurosurgeon at the Mayo Clinic.
He started to play his violin, and it was clear that he couldn't play, and he said, "Can you help me with this?"
Dr. Lee suggested a cutting-edge brain procedure called deep brain stimulation, which would require drilling a hole in Frisch's head.
I had one reaction. No one is ever drilling a hole in my head. But after 3 months of the tremor getting worse and worse, someone drilling a hole in my head maybe wasn't such a bad idea.
Deep brain stimulation, it's a technique where we can target anywhere in the brain with an electrode and stimulate that area of the brain.
Roger's procedure is one of the many medical achievements showcased in a new documentary by Ken Burns called The Mayo Clinic. The hospital treats more than 1 million patients every year, changing numerous lives, just like Frisch's. And we're joined now by Roger Frisch. Roger, welcome to you.
Thank you so much.
So, how did you first get into the violin?
Actually, my father was one of the concertmasters with the Pittsburgh Symphony. So ever since I was a little kid, all I wanted to do was what Dad did.
Oh, so you make it into this orchestra, which I'm told the Minnesota Orchestra. It's the NFL of orchestras.
It's very similar to that, yes.
And you start in the back.
I started in the very back. I actually decided I needed a title, so I was principal last chair.
But you worked hard, and you wind up first chair, and then you notice something, as we document in the piece, and you start. What did you feel, in addition to concern for yourself and your medical situation? What were you scared?
When I first experienced the shaking in my bow, I actually wasn't playing with the orchestra. I was playing a concerto with an orchestra in China, and once I felt that little tremor, I thought, maybe I'm tired. Maybe I just don't feel well. And then that whole next 2 weeks that I was performing in China, I noticed this tremor was not going away. And for a performing musician, you start to panic.
Yeah. Did you try to hide it? Or?
Of course I tried to hide it. It's not something you ever want your colleagues to see, because the idea is they're going to see someone who can control part of their playing, and the thinking is your career is done.
So
maybe their nerves are shot.
Doctors start pumping you full of medications, which were not the answer for you. And then you meet Dr. Lee, and the notion of the hole in your head comes up. So was it desperation ultimately that led you to say, let's try it?
Sure, of course it was desperation. I wasn't ready to give up my career. I had way too much to say with the violin. Oh. And so after a couple months of different medications that the Mayo Clinic had offered, and this is standard protocol, and with many people, that's successful.
During the procedure, he wanted you to play the violin.
Yes.
During the brain procedure. Can you just tell us before we go to break, because we're going to pick it up in a minute, what you told them about the violin you'd be using?
Well, my violin that I have is an old Italian violin dated 1772. It's worth quite a bit of money. And so we decided perhaps it was not a great idea to have that in the surgery. So Mayo Clinic decided they would purchase their own instrument. And so no expense was spared. They went on eBay and bought one for $75.
And boy, oh boy, did he play it. Roger's going to show us how his new brain technology works right after this break. And we're back now with the best thing you're going to see all day. Roger Frisch is here. He's the violinist who underwent brain surgery for uncontrollable tremors. Roger's neurosurgeon, Dr. Kendall Lee, is also here, along with filmmaker Ken Burns, who featured Roger's story in his new documentary, which you must see, about the Mayo Clinic. Okay, so let me ask you, Dr. Lee. Yes. In the film, they show you drilling the one hole into Roger's brain, and the tremors resolved about 50%. And
Yes.
that's when you said what?
Well, at that point, as a concertmaster, the question was, is that good enough? And we needed him to be awake because I needed to see him playing the violin to see how much of the tremor that we treated. And then his answer was, unfortunately, it wasn't good enough. And so he said, add the second lead.
So Dr. Lee said, how about a second hole in your brain? which was experimental. They didn't know whether that would do it or not. And Roger's like, what the hell? In for a penny, in for a pound, right? Okay. So you put electrodes in his brain?
Yes, that's correct. So actually one more thing about that violin is our division of engineering made it so that I could see his tremor because they added an accelerometer, which is something that allows me to see how much tremor he had as he was playing the violin.
There is nothing the Mayo Clinic cannot do. That is one of the takeaways from Ken's film. All right, so now you've got electrodes in your brain. You have a remote control. Like you describe it in the movie as a garage door opener.
I do. It's about the size of a garage door opener.
Can you show us how this goes?
And so the device is right under the skin, and so I'm on now. So as you see, I can draw. In fact, I can draw a smoother bow now than before the operation. But I can also turn it off. So this actually says off.
To your brain.
And yes. So now I no longer have the luxury of having the information corrected. Mm-hmm. And I try and put the bow up to the...
Oh, my God.
And no kidding, I'm not making that up, and it always looks like I am. So it's fine, really, because I turn it. Yes, in fact, I'm back on. My kids have no end of fun with that, and
right.
So.
That is spectacular. Dr. Lee, spectacular. And that is one of the many reasons, Ken, that you got interested in the Mayo Clinic in a documentary that's so well worth your time. There are other stories in it as well. But what is so special about this place?
It's, people compare it. It's been rated the best hospital in the United States, therefore the world. And people compare it to Lourdes and Mecca, the place where you go for miracles. And what we found making the documentary over several years is that that's where miracles do happen. Just unbelievable outcomes. They've got a different way of doing it. They put the patient first. They've been associated with a group of sisters from the St. Francis ministry.
They believe in faith,
they
not
believe
just
in
science.
Faith and hope and science is the subtitle of our documentary. And all of that, in fact, in another section of the film, Dr. Lee says that he was taught by one of the sisters to treat every patient as if it's Jesus Christ. And what you see is that this combination of faith and hope and science, real pure science, this is not fakery, has delivered the best patient care you can get. And they're a nonprofit. The doctors are on salary. They foster a culture of collaboration.
It's a different approach.
They've engineered
entirely.
everything.
How many more years of playing did you get?
Well, it's been 9 years now, and I'm still going, have no intention to stop.
Good for you. Dr. Lee, thank you for all the good work you do. And Ken, thank you for this film. It's called The Mayo Clinic, Faith, Hope, Science. You can see it on Tuesday, September 25th at 9 p.m. on PBS. Well worth your time. We'll be right back.